But it was a very, very scary decision because I had finally left I'd done this thing that I'd been wanting to do for years. It's very scary to leave medicine. And here I am going back into, I thought, am I going back to my abuser? Am I going back to something that made me so unhappy before? What am I thinking? I'm so fortunate. I finally got out. What am I doing?
There are times in our lives that change the way we see the world. Navigating these challenges can take insight, trusted confidants, or even a coach. Let's explore those moments. In this companion podcast to RX for Success, we will discover ways to learn and write our own success stories together. I'm Dr. Dale Waxman, a physician coach with MD Coaches, and this is Life-Changing Moments. Today we're talking with Dr. Lara Hochman. Dr. Hochman was featured on RX for Success episode 112. In that conversation with Dr. Cook, she recounted a life-changing moment, and I wanted to bring her back and explore that some more. Before we get into revisiting that time, a bit of background about Dr. Hochman. Dr. Hochman is a family medicine physician in Austin, Texas, and the founder of Happy Day Health, a physician matchmaking agency to match doctors with well-run, physician-owned private practices where they can avoid burnout and enjoy practicing medicine again. Lara, welcome back to the MD Coaches family of programs and to Life-Changing Moments.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
You know, you and I were connecting before we started recording. We have this Texas connection. I was on faculty in Galveston. I understand that you were a med student there.
I was, yeah. I was there during Hurricanes Katrina, Rita, and Ike.
Wow. Did you actually stay on the island during that time, or did you evacuate?
No, we evacuated.
Wow. All three of those. My goodness. Wow. That did not happen while I was there. We had to prepare to evacuate, but that didn't happen. But that's part of Galveston living.
Definitely adds to the adventure.
Right. Well, welcome again. So as I mentioned a moment ago, in listening to that conversation you had with Randy about your path into healthcare, you were describing a time when you were between jobs right after leaving one due to burnout and some other contractual issues, as I recall. Instead of seeking a job right away, you decided to spend the summer with your children. And you said, boy, that was the best summer ever. And then you found a position, but you also found yourself in some turmoil over whether to take it. So what I'd like to do is just to play that segment, and then we'll talk about how you worked your way through your decision making. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
And then another job, I feel like it fell into my lap where, this recruiter approached me and I went to interview, and I remember leaving the interview with this gut feeling of, don't do this. Like, absolutely don't do this. You're just getting yourself right back into it. You finally got out of medicine after thinking about it and, burning out. And then my brain kicked in and said, well, but this is the perfect job. I'm going to have time with patients. I don't need to deal with insurance companies. Like, this job is exactly what I'm trying to, it's exactly not what I'm trying to avoid. It is what why I got into medicine. But I had so much apprehension because of what I had felt before that I didn't know if I even wanted to take what looked to be incredible.
So, Lara, just as hearing that again, any kind of reflections as you hear that again, just to kind of start us off?
Gosh, it just absolutely brought me back to that moment. It was so interesting to hear it back to myself and feel those feelings again and think about where I was then and where I am today. And I'm an entirely different person. And it wasn't even that long ago.
Yeah. So I wonder if we can kind of, it's great that you're back there. What I'm interested in is, it sounded like it had, in your mind, it had all the elements of job satisfaction that your previous one that you left did not. And on paper, it kind of looked great, but you were hesitant. So what was that about as you think about it?
When I had left my prior position, I didn't plan on going back to practicing medicine. I had no plans on going back. I had left because, I had this feeling that the state of medicine was in disarray. Medicine was not going in a good direction. I didn't want to be a part of medicine, which was just falling apart. And it was absolutely not making me happy, nor anyone that was around me. Because, when you're burned out, your whole life suffers. So this job really fell into my lap. I mean, I got a message from an internal recruiter from this company, and it had all the elements of like, well, I'll at least look at it. And I did. But it was a very, very scary decision because I had finally left I'd done this thing that I'd been wanting to do for years. It's very scary to leave medicine. And here I am going back into, I thought, am I going back to my abuser? Am I going back to something that made me so unhappy before? What am I thinking? I'm so fortunate. I finally got out. What am I doing?
Just to use a term, it sounds to me like just sort of the interview process, something got triggered for you.
Yeah, it was definitely all the old things that came up with medicine of never being done, the fear of hurting someone mistakenly, or, even bad reviews on Yelp of, I'm trying to hurt someone and here they are complaining that I don't want to give them a medication that has more potential for harm than good, or, all the things that come up, and being the first one to drop my kid at daycare and the last one to pick her up, and all those things that came up, and, being cold when I'm at my kid's birthday party because I'm on call that weekend, or, all the things that we have to deal with in medicine. All of those feelings were like, what am I getting myself back into?
Right. And you said in the podcast you had the best summer ever, which of course there was none of that. You're just coming off the heels of that experience.
Oh, yeah. I even remember thinking, is this the honeymoon period, or is not working really this great? I got to be with my kids. We went to the park. They had a kids symphony orchestra. I would take them to that. It was fun. Like, I got to be with my kids, and we went away for these little trips where we didn't even go anywhere. It was middle of nowhere. I'd find a little bed and breakfast in the middle of nowhere. We would just stay and be together. And it was incredible. It was really, really fun.
Mm-hmm. And you said this kind of fell into your lap. Somebody had reached out to connect with you about that position.
Yeah. I mean, I think of it as falling into my lap. And on the other hand, I also think, well, I was somehow open to it. So, things can fall into your lap, but it's what you do with it that counts. So, it's funny because I never respond to recruiters ever. I normally just delete or unsubscribe or stop or whatever it is. And this one I didn't, and I responded. So I say it fell into my lap, but I mean, that's what recruiters do, is they message you about jobs you don't want. That's what a recruiter's job is. But I was open enough to it to respond and look into it.
Yeah. So say a little bit more about, you were somewhat open to it. Say more about that.
I think the fear in me when I left medicine was, I've just given up all these years of training. I trained into my 30s, and what am I giving up? So I think a little part of that was brought out when this recruiter messaged me and said, hey, there's this position at this big company wellness center. And I looked into a little bit and thought, what have I got to lose? What it sparked in me was more of, can I make a change in this big company, help them be healthier, help them, and so I think maybe the part of me that enjoys being a part of people's wellness really just came out. And so I looked into it.
So that's great. So there was this, I think also in the podcast, you had said that there was, you're the kind of person that is not somebody who sits by when things need to change. And so there's that piece also about, just sort of leaving it all together would not have been totally fulfilling for you either. It's kind of what I read into that. Did I get that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Crow, founder and CEO for MD Coaches. Here on RX for Success, we interview a lot of great medical professionals on how they grew their careers, how they overcame challenges, and how they handle day-to-day work. I really hope you're getting a lot of great information. But if you're looking for an answer to a specific problem, management or administration challenge, or if you're feeling just a bit burnt out, like maybe you chose the wrong career, well, then there's a faster way to get the help you need. No, it's not counseling, it's coaching. RX for Success is produced by MD Coaches, a team of physicians who have been where you are. I know you're used to going it alone, but you don't have to. Get the support you need today. Visit us at mymdcoaches.com to schedule your complimentary consultation. Again, that's mymdcoaches.com, because you're not in this alone.
We'll get back to our interview in just a moment, but right now I want to tell you a little bit about Physician Outlook. If you haven't discovered this remarkable magazine, please do so very soon. It was created by physicians for physicians to showcase the intersection between clinical and non-clinical interests, whether it's writing, painting, cooking, politics, and dozens of other topics. Physician Outlook gives a physician perspective. It's available online and in print. It's really unique among physician lifestyle magazines. And like the Prescription for Success podcast, Physician Outlook amplifies the voice of any physician who has something to say. It also engages patients who still believe in physician-led, team-based care. And Prescription for Success listeners can get 3 months free when you enter our promo code RX for Success and select the monthly option at checkout. That's a really great deal on this stunning publication. And now let's get back to today's interview.
So let's kind of go back to those moments when you said, boy, there's just all kinds of red flags here. I'm getting triggered all over the place. And then you said, and I took it anyway. So what went into that decision making?
Well, I was very fortunate. The position was PRN. So there was a part of me that said, if I don't like it, no big deal. I can leave. And it's funny because this PRN position then a couple of weeks later turned into another permanent position at a sister clinic for this company. But I decided to take it because I felt that this is great. I can work 1 day a month. I can work 1 day a week. I can make it fit my life as I needed to. I don't have to give up time with the kids. And so there was that fear of I don't want to go back, but there was enough of me that thought, if I don't like it, I can leave. If I don't take this opportunity, I'll never know what I'm missing. And there was still that part of me that I'm not like that anymore, but there was still that part of me that thought I'm just a physician. I have no other skills. I think that's something that a lot of us in medicine feel is I'm just a doctor. I can't do anything else. And so, I had thought, I'm a doctor. I don't have anything else as far as work or income or skills. I'm going to go use my skills, which are amazing skills. It's really cool to be a doctor. But, in that summer, I had thought, what else can I do? Can I, help? I came up with all sorts of ideas for, helping individuals with their wellness or helping physicians with some sort of advocacy. And all of those things I had thought, I can't do that. I'm just a doctor. So, that played into the decision a little bit, but also the fear of jumping back into medicine was squashed quite a bit by the fact that it was PRN. If I didn't like it, it's no big deal. I can do it just enough to keep my skills up, but not enough that I burn out again. So all of that fear was taken away in the fact that it was PRN. And I'm glad I did, because I remember driving home my first day, I called my mom on the phone and I said, oh my goodness, Mom, this is what medicine needs to be. This is why I went into medicine. It was so much fun. I had time with patients. I went there, I saw patients, I charted, and I left with all my work done. It was fun, and the patients were awesome, and it was really enjoyable being there and being a doctor again.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I wanted to ask you a little bit more about that. What you were at the tail end of this, the parts of your job that are professionally fulfilling. Can you say a little bit more about that? Some of it was you were saying to your mother, "This is fun." What about that? What about that? Maybe in contrast to what it had been before.
Yeah, the parts of my job that I love the most are people. I love people. I love people. So being around the patients was amazing. They were smart and fun to be around, and I love joking with my patients. So we joked around a little bit, and I got to know them. Within the confines of a 30-minute visit, but I got to know what their issues were, and I got to know a little bit about them as human beings and what makes them tick. And we even talked a little bit about, some crazy things that they did in their spare time, which is super fun. And, I had enough time that it wasn't stressful, that I could get to know the people that I was working with a little bit. So got to know the doctors. They were great. No one was stressed out. It was a wonderful culture. Everyone enjoyed being there. We were laughing and joking, not in a way that got in the way of your work. I don't like being in a place that is a work hard, work hard. I like being in a place that is work hard, play hard. So, I felt open to say to people, hey, it was my first day. I didn't know how to use the EMR. How do I do this? Or how do I do that? Or, and it was exciting because it was nurses rooming the patients. So I'd say, oh, I need blood drawn. And they're like, okay, tell me what you need drawn. And I was like, oh, okay. It was very efficient. So I got to really enjoy the people on both the patient side and the colleague side. And the medicine was fun and interesting. I enjoy procedures. So I got to do a couple of procedures. I did, some of the things were, just fun, easy medicine. Some were more challenging where I got to use my brain. It's fun. Like medicine is cool. When you get to help that many people in one day, it's cool. But, the things in medicine that we don't enjoy just sap all that enjoyment out of medicine.
Yeah, it sounds like there was a place where you got to be fully what you imagined for yourself as a family physician, and a lot of those barriers that made things unpleasant were just not present there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's incredible what time with patients will do.
There's something that came up for me as you were talking. In our specialty in family medicine, a colleague says our specialty is relationships, and you had the time to have relationship.
Yeah.
I want to go back just a little bit. You were saying earlier that at the time you had sort of this belief that I'm a physician, I can only do physician things. That's changed over time. Can you say more about that?
Yes. We spend so long learning to be a doctor, and we get all of the decisions kind of beat out of us when we just have to, we take the MCAT, then we go to medical school, then we do our rotations, and then it's a very set course. All the decision making is taken out of our hands. It's like a muscle that you have to build. And so I spent until I was 30 years old learning to be a physician. I put my energy into nothing else. I didn't start a business. I didn't, work in consulting or as a receptionist or any of the other things that you could do. And I felt very, very pigeonholed, and not in a bad way. I liked medicine, but when it came to thinking, what else can I do? Everything else was, well, I can't do that. Or, when I had left my job and I had thought, well, maybe I'll do lobbying. And I was like, well, I can't lobby. I don't know how to talk to people. Or I had thought maybe I'll do physician coaching in contract negotiations. And then I was like, well, no one wants to listen to me. And then I thought, I'd love to teach people how to just be healthier. So go to their home. And I came up with this incredible idea where I'd go to their home and teach them to cook and have guests that, give them little samples of yoga and all these other things. And then I thought, well, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to start a business. I don't know how to market. I don't know how to put a program together. All I know how to do is be a doctor. So all the ideas I came up with basically came down to, but I'm just a doctor. I don't know how to do any of that. And, this path that took me where I am today, where I ended up starting my own business, which is so far from what I ever imagined I would do, it's led me to realize I can do anything. I don't need to just be a doctor. I mean, not just being a doctor is wonderful, but there's so many more things that I can do. I just have to let go of that fear, and I can still have the fear. I just say, okay, I'm afraid of this, and then I still go do it. It's very freeing to know, gosh, I can do anything. I can consult. I have things, people actually want to hear. I mean, look at me. I'm on a podcast. People hopefully want to hear what I have to say. And this is very different than how I used to feel. And I think a part of it is just letting go of that fear, not necessarily not being afraid, but not letting that fear stop you. So that's it. I just go in the face of fear and just go towards it.
Yeah. In the earlier podcast, you talked about bravery. And is that an example of that for you?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Absolutely. And that was definitely a muscle that I consciously strengthened. I knew that I was letting my fears stop me. And I consciously just started with something easy, and I worked my way up to where I am today.
Yeah. So there's this sort of noticing that there's some fear, but going ahead and moving through that and learning from that anyway. Are there some moments that you can think of as you look back where it shifted for you, where you're there now, but what were some of the moments that allowed you to shift your thinking? Do you have some recollection of that?
It was a lot of little moments, some bigger, that got me to where I am today. A part of it was I know that my fear stops me from doing things. And I always had this, the way I define bravery and courage is to not let fear stop you from doing things. So you can be afraid and you do it anyway. That is how I define bravery. I just started with flying. I have a fear of flying. I get very, very nervous. And every time I get on an airplane and there's turbulence, I freak out. And every time I think, oh my gosh, I should have taken something. Why don't I take something? And part of it also, well, then I have a fear of taking medications. So there's that too. But at the end of the flight, I think, gosh, I made it. Like, I did it. I got through it. The turbulence was fine. I was terrified during the turbulence and I made it through. And then I worked through, I have a hobby that I enjoy tremendously, but it's scary to me. So I do gymnastics. And every time I do a flip, I have to, I feel this intense rush of fear. I'm not 20 years old and here I am doing gymnastics. But, it seems so silly. But every time I go to gymnastics, I think I faced my fear. I did it. I was afraid. I did a flip and I did it anyway. And that's how it started. And then I took a position in this company that then turned permanent, where I started as the physician at the practice that was just starting. I had ideas for what to do, and the ideas actually happened. Like I'd say, hey, let's do this. And they made it happen, which then gave me a little bit of confidence. And then, then I became the lead physician, and that practice really flourished. Like we had the highest employee engagement scores in the whole company. We had the best patient satisfaction scores in the company. We had the best metrics. Like it was awesome. We did so well. And I think that built up my courage to be able to do things that I felt were right, to know that sometimes they're not going to go well. And that's okay because, there's some wins and there's some not wins. And the nurse that I was working with at the time, we worked together as a dyad. She would say, I'd say to her at the beginning when I first became the lead physician, gosh, I really wish we could do X, Y, Z. And her answer to me was, you can make that happen. You're in charge. And so, there was that, oh my gosh, like there was this very definite mindset shift of, oh, I can do that. And I did. And so, that was probably the most pivotal moment when the two of us were sitting together and she said to me, you can make that happen. And I realized, oh my goodness, I can make that happen. I can. So that was probably the biggest shift. And, there were all sorts of other fears that I had to throw away when I was starting my business. But, every day is a fear. I still get nervous speaking to people, surprisingly. And every time that I would speak to a person, my business is entirely about speaking to people I've never met before. And so every day was terrifying. And every day I felt like I have no idea what I'm doing. And so it was very empowering to get to this point now where now I know what I don't know. Before I didn't even know what I didn't know. And I felt like I was floundering every day, but I just kept doing it. And I think the act of doing it every day was so empowering of I'm not giving up. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm not giving up. So there were lots of little moments and big moments that got me to this point of forget fear. If I'm scared, great. Listen to what I'm scared of and see what I can do about it.
Lara, that's quite an inspiration. I think that your description of courage and bravery and aware of what you are afraid of, and here you are. That's very impressive what you just said. You get scared talking to people, and yet that's a lot of what you do. It's what you have done and what you do. And you do it brilliantly, by the way. You seem very, very comfortable and relaxed. And I think that's a really important message, not just, what you do specifically, but just facing your fears, actually becoming aware of them. As you so beautifully articulated, we as physicians kind of go along this path. And because we go along this path and there's sort of this straight line and linear path, we tend to not be aware of what else is open to us. And we sort of only know this one thing. And it gets very scary there's a whole other world out there. It can get very scary. So you just did a nice job of telling us a little bit about, recognizing that that's a limiting belief. I can do things. And your nurse had to share it with you. Your nurse said, wait a minute, you're the one in charge. Like, wow, I didn't even really realize that. That's awesome. Well, thank you very much for that. Beautiful story. And as we're wrapping that up, as you look back at that time of your life or any of the times since, in addition to all the wonderful things you've shared with us so far, are there any other learnings that you want to impart to our listeners about your journey along the way?
Yeah, I would say, I think it's so important to us as physicians in the state of medicine that we're in, not to give up. We all went into medicine because there's something in it that appeals to us. And what I see a lot of is doctors who are so unhappy in their current positions, but then they finally take that step of leaving their position to find another one, but they jump right back into the same environment. So I would just love it if doctors, really before making that leap, which is a big one, to take stock of what it is that they don't like and what they want to change before then finding their next position. Because that's how change happens. If we all just go from, the same thing to the same thing, then we're not going to have that change in our own lives. And ultimately, we're all kind of leaving medicine early, which is so unfortunate. So really, I would say, a lot of it is please be aware of what it is that's bugging you in your life and what it is that you can do to change it.
Great advice. I really appreciate that. So Dr. Lara Hochman, thank you very much for joining us back with our MD Coaches family of productions and podcasts for Life-Changing Moments. Really appreciate you being here with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
I really enjoyed talking with Dr. Lara Hochman. And here are my takeaways from this episode. 1, when a new opportunity opens up, if fear starts creeping in, check and see if it is due to being triggered by old negative experiences in a similar setting. 2, it's okay to face those fears. Courage can be defined as not letting fear stop you from doing the things that are right for you. 3, check and see if limiting beliefs are holding you back. For example, are you thinking that you can only do one kind of job with all of your education? 4, when taking risks in unknown territory, know that sometimes things are not going to go well, and that's okay. Finally, Dr. Hochman discussed that when doing things one is passionate about, even if it is not going well, keep doing it anyway. As she said, I'm not giving up. Well, this last quote kind of reminds me of the concept of grit. Grit is defined as a personality trait possessed by individuals who demonstrate passion and perseverance toward a goal despite being confronted by significant obstacles and distractions. I think all physicians had to have possessed grit at some point to get through pre-med, med school, and residency, if not all of those. For many of us, when things aren't going the way we hoped, anticipated, or planned for, it may be time to rekindle our gritty selves and take steps to create a more fulfilled self. Thank you for tuning in to Life-Changing Moments. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to rate us 5 stars and leave a review. Doing so helps our podcast reach more listeners. Have something to share? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Visit the MD Coaches community on Facebook groups. This dynamic virtual space is a place to continue discussion about life-changing moments and perhaps share some life-changing moments of your own. Join the conversation today.